In the previous video I made, I gave you a quick overview of my Unit Origami app. Now we're going to drill down and focus on the editor. First off, you'll want to learn how you can interact with the model. If you swipe with one finger, you can rotate your model around. If you use two fingers, you can pan from left to right, up and down. You can also use two fingers to turn it around if you twist with your fingers. And finally, you can use two fingers to zoom in and zoom out if you pinch in or pinch out. If you double tap a piece, it'll bring up the most recently used material editor. So you can pick the most recently used colors for both the front and the back of the paper of the current piece that you just selected. So let's change this to blue. Let's change the front to blue. The editor has three different input modes. There's view, add, and edit. In view mode, it hides most of the UI, so you can just focus on interacting with the model. Add is for adding pieces, edit is for editing pieces. Before I cover these modes in more detail, I quickly want to cover the undo and redo buttons. Since I've changed some of the colors here, let's just undo that. So tap undo once, twice. So I undid the front and the back color change. You can redo it to put it back. I just started a new model from scratch, so I could give you a better walkthrough of the different input modes. This is the Basquetta star piece. So when you go into the edit mode, you might notice that you can't interact with any of the buttons right now. They're all grayed out and nothing happens. That's because you don't have a piece selected. When you go into edit mode, first you have to pick a piece. You know you'll have selected one when you see the white ball show up. This tells you what the current active joint is that you're working with. More on that in a second. So now that I've selected this piece, you see that these buttons, you can interact with them. Let's change the color to red. Add mode looks at every piece in the scene, and for every flap that isn't currently connected to another piece yet, it'll insert a ghosted image of a copy of the current piece at that spot. And then if you click on it, it'll add it to the scene. Now we'll focus on the piece editor window. You can click on the title bar to move it around if you want to interact with your model without it interfering with what you're working on. You can also click on this little button to minimize it so it doesn't get in your way. You can click on the front button to change the front color, change it to green. You can click on the back button, same thing, change the color. Only when you're in edit mode and there's more than one piece will you be able to delete a piece. You can then click on a different piece if you're in edit mode to change it. Let's talk about joints. So the currently selected joint will show up as a white ball, and you can see it in the preview of the piece editor and in the scene as well to help you identify which joint you're working on. If you click cycle joint, it'll change what the currently active joint is that you're looking at. This particular piece only has 3 joints. If you click cycle angle, it'll change the angle of that joint to presets that I've determined resolve into interesting results. Now, there's definitely more options that you can use. These are definitely not the only angles that will yield interesting results, but this will just give you a quick set of angles that you can work with. Later on, I'll show you how you can input any custom angle you want. Now let's do a quick example showing how little changes can yield different results. So we start out with the base version of this piece and just click to add pieces until the model's finished. We see we come up with a piece that only has 4 points. So if we go undo that back to the beginning, so now we have the same base piece, but instead we change the angle to a different size and then start filling in points. You see the star that we saw in the beginning of this video. This will take a minute, so let's just fast forward till it's complete. Now you have a 20-sided star. So you'll want to save your work. So make sure you go to the main menu and then you hit the save button. In order to show you how to make custom angles, I thought I would give you a real world example. So when I was looking at these 2 different types of pieces, this one I call the little turtle, this is the Basquetta star. When I was looking at Little Turtle, some of the built-in models, I noticed I had this model that had points with 4 sides on it. But when you go back to the Best Get a Star pre-built models, you notice I didn't have any 4-point stars, so let's go ahead and make one. So we have a 3-sided star point, and here's a 5-sided star point, but there's no 4 sides per point. So let's go ahead and do that. In order to enable custom angle support, you have to go into the menu, click on the advanced option. This gives you this additional UI element, which lets you change what the current digit is of the angle that you're manipulating. And you can add to it, subtract from it. Now what we're going to do is I've already predetermined what the angles are that we want to work with in order to get a 4-sided star. So we're just going to enter those in. So the middle point has to be 41 degrees exactly. The ends have to be 80.15. So now when we flush out this model, see we get points that have 4 sides on them. Notice the color's a bit off here. Let's change that. So now we have a completed model. Save it. The last thing I want to show you is that your saved models show up at the end of the list for the series that you were just working on. So, and they user-defined models show up as a different colored background. So it's green versus blue for user-defined content. So now that you know how to use the editor, I hope you'll feel more comfortable experimenting with creating new unit origami. Just giving you an example, this is something that I figured out how to create just from experimenting with the editor. If you start out with one of these and then press in on the top ends here, you can end up with a torus shaped structure like this. It looks kind of like a donut. I hope you have fun experimenting with the unit origami editor. Thanks.